uninsurance boost to meet basic needs as the economy remains in deep recession. The chamber is not set to reconvene until 3 p.m. on Monday. Just so we're clear, tweeted economist Robert Reich, more than 25 million unemployed Americans are set to lose their extra unemployment benefits, and the Senate just left for a 3-day weekend. Republicans have lost the right to govern. Again, absolutely. This is really why. This, I think, more than anything, could be best summed up as why people hate the government. Because they're going off, again, on a 3-day weekend, while people, a good portion of the country, is set to see their income be sliced in half or cut by even 75%. With another rent payment due, as again, it's about to be August already, can you believe it, in 24 hours. Like, it is insane. People, so far, we have avoided, absolute, economic calamity, in a way that, not to say that we haven't really avoided it, we're kind of in kind of a slow motion crash where there's kind of weak stopgap measure after weak stopgap measure after weak stopgap measure. And I mean, most people will tell you, most economists and most even Republican governors will tell you, and just Republican economists, people who are reasonable but maybe tend to lean more to the right. The main reason why consumer spending and things, just stuff like that, isn't totally cratered is because people are getting unemployment insurance, and that is helping them in such a big way. And that's just foundational, really, to the continuation of the economy. That, it's so important. Just give people, when, again, maybe they don't even care about the 25 billion Americans who are unemployed at this point. Maybe I'm sure they really, in their heart of hearts, do not care about what's happened to them. They care about, again, keeping the economy going, keeping things running, keeping just things on track, and not having mass evictions, not making it look really, really bad. And when I say look really, really bad, of course it is really, really bad, and it does look really, really bad. But when I say it looks really bad, I mean people being forced out of their homes on the streets, people being just dragged out. That's what I picture. Just videos of just absolute economic squalor. And we're getting there. We literally are. We are getting there. There are videos of protesters standing outside courthouses, physically blocking these landlords from getting to the court to try and evict their tenants because they haven't obviously paid rent because they're freaking unemployed. So it is that is really what shows you on Thursday here that things are just so deeply broken, and they're only going to break more. Ron Johnson attempted to pass by unanimous consent legislation that would give states an option to either pay out a federally funded $2,000 per week UI boost or implement a formula that would replace 2/3 of a worker's previous wages. Senator Ron Wyden of Oregon called Johnson's proposal, quote, so heartless, even Cruella de Vil would not endorse it. Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer blocked the passage of Johnson's legislation, which would have amounted to a $1,600 per month drop in benefits for millions of Americans, and subsequently attempted to pass the HEROES Act, a sprawling legislative package approved by Democrats in the House in May that would extend the weekly $600 UI boost through January of next year, and then Johnson blocked that bill. Later, Republican Senator of Arizona Martha McSally tried to pass a 1-week extension of the $600 boost, but Schumer rejected, dismissing the effort as clearly a stunt. Washington Post Jeff Stein noted on Twitter that it would likely have taken about 2 weeks for the 1-week payment to actually reach people. So either way, for these next 2 weeks, people are going to be kind of hanging out in limbo there, and they're really, really going to get screwed, which is scary because this stuff it's going away. There's nothing's being done about it, and people right now, a good portion of the country, are literally depending on it to put food on their families' tables and to keep themselves in their homes. Again, as this kind of eviction moratorium stuff is kind of, again, also hanging on the edge, and the money that people have is still not getting any better. The income for these unemployed people isn't really changing. The economic situation isn't improving. It's really, really bleak, to say the least. Tens of millions of Americans will go weeks without federal jobless aid because Congress has not renewed the benefits in time for overwhelmed state unemployment systems to adjust their computers. State offices will need weeks to reprogram their systems to account for an extension of the 600 weekly federal payments that expire on Saturday or any changes that Congress makes to the benefit amount or eligibility rules. So pretty much it's already done. In fact, they passed that. They've adjourned everything in the Senate. It's already done. Americans are set to really, things are economically, things are going to get into a whole new layer of hell at this point because they have not done this. And it's really, really scary. It really is. Don Bayer, a Virginia representative, Democrat, he says, as we have warned for weeks, the Senate needed to pass an extension a week ago to avoid a lapse in the expanded $600 per week unemployment benefits. Mitch McConnell's failure to act already sealed this lapse, and have measures and gimmicks from the White House cannot do it. And again, they are already going to see lapse in unemployment benefits. Regardless if the GOP agrees to an extension of the $600 in coming hours, most state systems will not be able to program an extension in time. That's a tweet there from Rebecca Rainey. And of course, they didn't, so things are going to be much, much worse for much, much longer. Because, guys, at least they're getting back on Monday at 3 p.m., so it's fine. Once they get back, once they go out for their 3-day weekend, they'll just be out. They'll be chilling. They'll get right back at it. I'm sure. So, yeah, indefensible and disgusting, says Ryan Thomas, the National Press Secretary for Stand Up America, the advocacy group. So the Senate has adjourned until Monday afternoon with no action on coronavirus relief. Federal employment benefits will expire tomorrow. Very, very scary economic situation a lot of people are going to find themselves in. All right. We will get right back to some very, very important stories coming up. Just keep listening. It's the Spencer Walsh Radio Network. We are talking today a lot about the coronavirus. We're talking about how Jared Kushner is being called to resign over a staggering level of depravity that put politics before public health. So, yeah, and he says we'll also be talking about Bolivia and the NBA coming back. But first, we start talking about this. In the wake of the devastating new reporting by Vanity Fair, a chorus of voices called for the immediate resignation of Jared Kushner, a top White House advisor and son-in-law of President Donald Trump, for disastrous and deadly failures by the administration that appear to have put the political desires of the president above the public health needs of the American people. And I think, if you don't think we're going to see 1,000 more stories like this in the years following, probably this when things and everything kind of hopefully blows over. And again, that, of course, comes to the assumption that things don't just keep getting worse and worse and worse and worse until this planet finally explodes into a fiery ball and we're all done for. But we are going to find out so many awful things that Trump did here and his associates did here, and this seems to be just one of them. The Vanity Fair article, what it does is it takes an exhaustive look at decisions made and actions taken by a secretive task force led by Kushner that was charged with implementing an aggressive, coordinated national COVID-19 response, which is exactly literally what they did not do. It was not aggressive. It was definitely not coordinated. And boy, oh boy, oh boy, just look at the hot spots in the country right now. It was not national. So that's kind of ironic. They included federal testing and a regime that would help stem the spread of the virus. With the investigation uncovered, according to reporter Catherine Eban, was an ultimately aborted plan for a far-reaching national testing strategy with deliberative process that began not with public health experts, but with bankers and billionaires. While the plan itself was divided by the team Kushner put together, was characterized as imperfect but a starting point, the most shocking revelations have to do with why the strategy, which members of the unit believed would head straight to Trump's desk and then be rolled out nationwide with large fanfare in early April, seemed to suddenly disappear like poof into thin air. So it looks like, again, they actually ended up having a national policy plan here. They had something ironed out. But as you can see, kind of life got in the way here. So, yeah. As EBAN reports, the prospect of launching a large-scale national plan was losing favor, said one public health expert in frequent contact with the White House official coronavirus task force. Most troubling of all, perhaps, was a sentiment the expert said that a member of Kushner's team expressed, that because the virus had hit blue states the hardest, a national plan was unnecessary and would not make sense politically. The political folks believe that because it was going to be relegated to Democratic states, they said they could blame those governors. And again, now it's clearly not relegated to Democratic states. Democratic states are doing better now after New York's big screw up in March and April. Now, mostly Republican states are doing awfully right now. But here's the logic. This was the plan. The political folks, and this is a direct quote, the political folks believed that because it was going to be relegated to Democratic states, they could blame those governors, and that would be, in fact, an effective political strategy. So there was it only be in the Democratic states, we can just say Andrew Cuomo sucks, and then since it won't ever go to the rest of the country, we can just blame Democrats and move on. Awesome. That logic, again, may have swayed Kushner. It was very clear that Jared was ultimately the decision maker as to what plan was going to come out. And again, that is the most tantalizing, the most frustrating part of this whole situation. By all accounts, by all intents and purposes, they actually had a national plan in place to deal with this situation. They actually had a national testing regime, which probably would have led to a better test and trace program like we just talked about. But they didn't. They aborted it, and it was for, again, purely political purposes. I think this is going to be probably the overarching story of how the White House really failed in this response and how it was largely motivated by political purposes and to appease kind of bankers and billionaires. But there's going to be, again, a bunch of little other tidbits that are just coming here. It's going to be absolutely enraging when we look at, again, the number of Americans that have died, which is almost certainly now going to exceed 200,000 when this thing is over. On April 27th, Trump stepped to the podium in a podium in the Rose Garden, flanked by members of the coronavirus task force and leaders of America's big commercial testing laboratories, Quest Diagnostics and LabCorp, and finally announced a testing plan which almost bore no resemblance to the one that had been forged in late March, which was supposed to be, again, rolled out in early April to, quote, large fanfare. It had shifted the problem of diagnostic testing almost entirely to individual states. While the veracity of such claims cannot be verified, and Kushner refused to answer a detailed set of questions or to be interviewed by Vanity Fair. Again, that is, reporting there from Vanity Fair. Implications of such decisions speak for themselves and drew immediate outrage and a demand for accountability. It is just an absolutely insane story. Imagine the administration had intel on an imminent terrorist attack that would kill over 100,000 people and chose to do nothing because it's politically easier, tweeted Matt Duss, the foreign policy advisor for Bernie Sanders, on his personal account. That's what we have here. We need to be talking about accountability for all of it. And that is really, accountability is what needs to happen. So, Public Citizen Advocacy Group says, quote, "Holy hell. Jared Kushner reportedly abandoned a national testing plan because of political advantageous. Sit back and let blue states be eviscerated by the virus. The corruption and depravity is simply staggering. Kushner needs to resign now." It is just really, it's hard to even comprehend. It's hard to even wrap your mind around. They had this plan right ironed out. They weren't as entirely incompetent as we thought they were. They knew what to do. They had a general, if somewhat vague, idea of what was needed to be done to contain this pandemic, but they abandoned it because they thought it would only hit blue states, and it would be politically easier to just blame the Democratic governors for the whole crisis. I mean, it's mind-blowing. If anything close to this is true, There needs to be some serious accountability, and we will not get it in at least the next, 3 days until the election. It's crazy. All right, so we're talking about now next, kind of switching stories here. Thousands of Bolivians have taken to the streets this week in mass demonstrations and marches against the coup government's decision to postpone the country's presidential election until October, further extending the brutal reign of unelected right-wing President Janine Áñez as the coronavirus